Greetings, everyone. Thanks for being at this October meeting, which we'll be dealing with reparations. Just some little technical hiccups we try to sort out at the moment, but I'm sure Steve will deal with those. It's been some bad news this month for some of our comrades who have not with us anymore. We've got Hormon Ousley. Some of you might have seen the news, has died. He was a real campaigner for our basic rights and for against racism for a very long time. So he'd be sadly missed. And also Alf Garner, who was very active with the Windrush and other issues that affect our communities. New comrades, not with us. I've had some apologies from EC members. Paul, who's in Jamaica, might not make it. He will try. And sadly, Laura injured her hand. Wouldn't be at this meeting. Today we're fortunate in having Anthony Gifford, QC, KC, I think it is now. Oh, and I'm talking all that time and my video is not on. I'm so sorry. I just realized my video wasn't on. So we'll be having a special guest at our meeting today, Tony, who I'll introduce in a little while. But today we decided to try and make this meeting really inclusive because I think with reparatory justice, we've still got a long way to go. We've progressed quite a lot, I think, in the last 10 years. Things have moved very quickly. But I still think there's many issues that we could keep looking at, keep improving, seeing what the challenges are. So we really appreciate when people make their comments or put the questions to us. It's the kind of issues, we will have people who sometimes oppose any talk of reparations, and also people who have questions about it. It helps us to really think about those issues and questions so we can deal with them. I shall make a start by just saying a brief update as to how I see the movement going here in the UK. We've just had a memorial 07 meeting at which Sir Hilary Beckles spoke on reparations, a very well-attended meeting. And, he talked about the 5 stages of reparations, going back to the times the enslaved were protesting. And, fast forwarding a bit to when Sir Arthur Lewis also put forward a program for reparations and tried to do the calculations for the sums that it involved. And as he put it, he was running out of knots. I think with AI and with other calculations that we made recently, we've got a clearer figure and picture of what is, in a sense, due to the ancestors of the enslaved. And I think that's, a fair thing. There's been many discussions. I think things have moved in the direction of many of the heirs of slavery actually coming forward, apologizing and making some reparations, which I think is a fantastic improvement. Also, most people would be aware of the Church of England putting 100 million in the pot, and that is being actioned with a committee that's been set up to administer or decide how those funds will go. And they rightly have said, a great start, but there needs to be more than the 100 million that was put in there. We look at those developments. We saw recently with Richard Drax in Barbados, still owning a plantation down there, as many people are aware, with the government offer of buying some of the land to do develop housing, meeting with opposition from the Barbadian people because they felt there's no way should Jacks be getting any more money out of the enslaved. So those are some of the developments. Also that the CARICOM and the African Union are talking and organizing better together, which can only be better for the movement as a whole. And globally, the issue is much more upfront with different states in America making some reparations, taking other kinds of actions. And we in the UK, certainly for Caribbean Labour Solidarity, we've decided to focus to get our support from the trade union movement. We've had great success in working with the two biggest unions in the country. And that, I was invited to do a presentation for one of the regional conferences, which I think was well received and people are keen to support the movement. Our task here is to make sure we get the information to the trade unionists and to other groups. One of the other groups I've been working with is the Morning Star Readers Group. Only yesterday I was up in Ipswich speaking to a group up there, and they're informing me that there's a Caribbean community in Ipswich, and they will be making contact with the possibility of me coming back to have a conversation with them about setting up a reparations group. We need to be moving out of London. We're mostly based in London, and so much of our activities happen in London. I think it's important the movement spreads out into more of the country, and especially going up north, which will be our focus for the next. We've also been building some alliances with political parties because at the end of the day, we would like to see this question raised in the House of Commons, House of Lords even, as has happened in the past. And so we're building alliances with political parties, with the Irish, with the Greens. We need to be building with Scotland. We haven't made any approaches there yet, but we will do. And we know the Labour Party here, Bella Rivera, she's been very active in the whole reparations campaign, as Clive Lewis is. So there's some support in the Labour Party. We doubt whether we will get the support from the leadership. And so we work on the basis that we will have to be fighting for reparations. So far, all of the prime ministers in the last 4 prime ministers have refused to even discuss the issue. We even meet with the CARICOM leaders. They, of course, are pushing for the International Criminal Court to get a discussion going. And our role here in the UK, I feel, is to keep applying the political pressure for the government of the day to have that conversation. The best option we've got, in my opinion, is working through the trade union movement and other community groups so we can start to build up, more noise, as it were, so that they listen to us. So we get there. Okay, I think, all right. And also we've definitely got the support of some of the independents. I've spoken with Jeremy Corbyn, who's the MP, independent MP for Islington North, and he's very supportive of reparations, and we know we can count on him to raise question in Parliament. And yes, so I think I'll stop there, and I'll ask maybe Steve to come in. I'm not sure. Let me just check. Are you ready, Tony? No, it's not. Maybe you can use this computer. Tony, maybe you can sit here and use this one and speak. Yeah, we'll just be for a short time. Only for a long one. Sorry, we've been getting connection issues, so I'm asking Anthony Gifford, KC now it is. formerly Lord Gifford. I think he's not too bothered about those kind of titles, but he's coming and he will speak about his experience of being in life with Bernie Grant. So you take my seat. I will vacate as he comes over here, and we'll hear from Tony for a little while. And after that, we will hear from Steve, and then we'll open the floor for discussions. And we hope you will engage with us. Thank you. All right, here we go. Okay.
Friends, good afternoon.
Let me put on. I'll put it here.
Friends, good afternoon.
I think they can.
Good
How
afternoon.
many of
Good afternoon.
my name is Tony Gifford. I am a citizen of two countries, UK and Jamaica. The first 30 years of my working life, I was a lawyer in England. And for the second 30 years of my life, I was a lawyer in Jamaica. And I've been very privileged to have been involved in the reparations issue since the early 1990s. And I want to maybe divide this contribution into two things. One is to give you a report from Jamaica, and secondly, to have a look at the way the opposition we meet from the establishment in UK. I have been lucky enough to have been taught, mentored, inspired by some of the great advocates of reparatory justice, and starting with Bernie Grant, who I worked with in the 80s and was great. For those who didn't know him, he was, I think, an inspiring man. He arrived for his first debate at the House of Commons in a magnificent Nigerian robe and cap, and he's been advocating the African cause, the cause of Black people, for the whole of his life until he died in 2000. I came to know from Bernie what the claim for reparations was about. Of course, I don't need to teach anyone here. But may I just tell you how we feel about it in Jamaica? There is universal understanding that the greatest injustice that ever happened to any part of humanity, namely the transatlantic trade in African people and the institution of chattel slavery, was a crime against humanity for which no recompense, reparation has ever been made. As you know, when emancipation happened in 1833, the British government didn't pay a penny to the former enslaved people, but paid £20 million to the owners of the so-called owners for the loss of their so-called property. And as anyone who knows Jamaica will tell you, Jamaican people have a profound sense of justice. And there's been no greater injustice in Jamaica than the institution of enslavement. And I think you have to understand why this cause is so deeply supported in the Caribbean, Jamaica, and other places. I think it's. I'm sorry, I have a disability which sometimes slows me down, or Parkinson's. And it's supported because of the enormity of the crime, the contempt with which people would have been treated since, the failure to give any recompense, and the cruelty of the system. And what has happened in Jamaica is that the matter has been taken from a popular movement into a government policy. In 2015, the Honourable Member Michael Henry led a debate in the Jamaica Parliament and secured a unanimous vote that Jamaica should make a claim for reparations against the government of the United Kingdom for the damage caused by enslavement. And I think it's important to realize that it's not some kind of symbolic payment that is being sought to placate the ancestors. That is part of it. Jamaicans have great reverence for their ancestors. But it's because the effects of the enslavement of people, the treatment of people like objects, beasts of burden, and things, and all the rest of it. I think mine is gone. No, this is just. It's because the effects of that crime are still being felt today. People, you realize in Jamaica and among people here as well, that whereas people like Prime Minister Cameron, Prime Minister was telling us to move on, it all happened long ago. When I was a member of the House of Lords once, I didn't like it. My first speech in the House of Lords was to vote for my abolition, but I took the place from my father because I thought I might be able to do some good with it. And in March 1993, I introduced a debate for the first time the government had been required to put their case against reparation. And what the government minister in that debate said, and I remember to this day what he said, was that he said, the case for reparations, my lords, depends. Case for reparations, my lords, depends on proving that there is some consequence, some damage still being suffered by the descendants of African people today. There is no evidence of that. Now, I'm sure if you all here in a big hall asked by a Tory, is there any damage done by slavery? You would all resoundingly say, yes, we see it, we feel it. Economically, Jamaica started when it was a colony and then later as an independent country with far too little investment, rotten public services, rotten education service, all due to the fact that Jamaica was plundered by the British who got very rich, so stately homes all over England. And people feel it's time for justice, for recompense. And one of the things we should be doing is to trace the damage caused to African descendants over the years, up to today. And there's a lot of work being done now by psychologists and health experts on the dangers to public health, the questions of diabetes. But apart from that, there's also a kind of a psychological consequence, which is people are not going to stand for this to be treated as something light, something historical, something like the Norman Conquest. No, it's something which was cruel and insulting then, and must be apologized for and repaired. The word reparation talks about putting things back in the state they were in. So it's an international law concept. And but there's another kind of reparation which is also needed, because it's not just the descendants of African people who suffer from the consequences of slavery. The white British are infected and poisoned with the racism and the concepts of white supremacy that were inculcated and were used to justify what would otherwise be unchristian and evil. For the Brit, I'll just end up by saying this: when you campaign in the UK, you will find that the British establishment is bitterly opposed to reparations. And why it is this: that Britain likes its relationships to the southern world to be that we give aid, we're charitable, we're beneficent, we want to help these poor people who became independent and made a mess of it. What reparation turns that argument on its head. Because when you seek reparation, you're not seeking aid, you're seeking justice. Justice for a crime committed against you. Justice as part of your human rights. And that is why, for the British, they will do it. They will try to stop the reparations going forward. But I think there is enough in Jamaica, certainly, and I think here, there will be enough understanding, particularly all the work that can be done. And let me just end off by saying that to support reparation, you don't have to be African descendant. I am in this movement. I thought I'm a white man. I never thought of myself as a white man. I'm a man. And in Jamaica, people don't treat me as a white man. They treat me as a man. And they wait and see what I do. Am I arrogant or am I level vibes? When it turns out that I'm level vibes, they'll work with me. And that is how life should be. There's room for all kinds of solidarity. In fact, it needs all kinds of solidarity. Apartheid was only ended by solidarity of people working, white and black, the freedom fighters in South Africa, and the supporters of them in the rest of the world. And I have lived to see that, and I intend, although, as you see, I'm not young, I intend to see us get some reparation for the atrocities which were committed by the government of the United Kingdom and its minions in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, and around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, share the screen. Hi, thanks. I'm back. Steve, I'm not sure. I've got a different face on my computer. What's happening there? Somebody's in my face. On the big screen.
In fact, if I turn my microphone on, you can hear me perfectly well.
Okay.
We can see you perfectly well. You in the
Right.
foreground, Tony in the
Right.
background, and
Yeah. No, what was happening? I had a face I didn't recognize that was there on my big screen. Okay, thanks.
and
I can see yours now. Nice. I can see your face. Thanks. I was seeing Carol. Okay, for some reason Carol's face was taking over my screen. No, nothing wrong with that, Carol, but it's just yeah, I didn't recognize you so well. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Tony, there for reminding us why we fight for reparations. And it echoes what Hilary Beckles said just a couple of days ago about the state of Jamaica at the time of emancipation with 80, at the time of independence with 80% illiteracy. He talked about the ill health, the problems that we've had with hypertension, with diabetes in the region, and most of it caused by the kind of foods that, or no food often for the enslaved that our ancestors had to survive on. I think he said Jamaica and Barbados were the places with the most amputations. And I know from my own experience that, you know, there's a rise in numbers in Guyana, and my own family have suffered as a result of those diets. I always remember my grandmother having an amputation, and right now one of my nieces, not yet 50, has had a double amputation. So we know we have rare problems and issues to deal with, and the call for reparations is one that, you know, we've got to just keep at. Okay, was there any, maybe I'll see if there's any questions to Tony that people might want to put. I just wanted to remind people that Tony was put forward the legal basis for the claims of reparations. People might just be able to see this screens. And this is the case that he had prepared in 93, I think this was in 93, that's right. So thank you. We've got one question. I've got a hand up. Joseph, Antoine, you want to come in with your question?
Yes, morning, Tony. Good afternoon, Tony. I think I met you when you came to Grenada one time.
Oh,
Yeah, I met you before. Yeah.
yes.
Now, you mentioned about maybe not, maybe Luke, you mentioned that, but I want to get an opinion from him about about the African Union and CARICOM working together or beginning to talk about reparations. How trustworthy we can trust these governments or these organizations to really do what needs to be done? We have a situation where one of the leading advocates and scholars of reparation, Dr. Hilary Bakers, accepting one of the colonial symbols, sir. So how do you respond to that in terms of the trust of these people? I hope I've made sense.
The cooperation between the African nations, AU and the CARICOM. As you know, CARICOM set up a CARICOM Reparations Commission has put forward the 10-point plan. It's really a 10-point plan because there have been criticisms of it, but it is a start and it is something to build on. And the 10 points are quite strong. In terms of Hilary Beckles, I respect him for what he does. I don't care what tickets that he wants to put in his name. One of my most loved artists in this country, the UK, until his sad death, was Benjamin Zephaniah. And Benjamin Zephaniah was offered the MB or the OB, one of these British Empire medals, and refused it. So Hilary can be judged by his performance and his actions. And I think it is remarkable that someone who's so close to the establishment as a chancellor of the vice chancellor of the university is so vocal on this very sensitive topic. he reminds me of another great man who's in the struggle at the moment, Judge Patrick Robinson, the judge of the International Court of Justice. He writes articles about reparations. And so we need to take our allies wherever they are. And it's not for us to pick up on everything we think that they do right or wrong. None of us would be in the struggle if people were critical. So I salute him. I don't care if he calls himself sir.
Yeah, thank you there very much for the question, and also to you, Tony. I see we've got from Nadine Vincent. Good to see you on Friday, Tony. Carol Vincent, thank you, Tony. Keep well, comrades, solidarity. Is Carol Vincent a longer message? You need to update your Zoom account. Somebody's telling me. Thank you, Tony. Keep well. Jeanette Camp, thank you for your long years of passion, commitment. First came the reparations movement when on one Saturday in the early 1990s, on my way out from a small hotel in Barbados to the beach. I was in Barbados to mark CXC examinations. I saw a notice on the hotel board about a symposium on reparations. This beach-loving girl immediately changed plans. Tony Gifford was part of the all-day session. My consciousness was completely reconfigured. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to just reply on Bernie.
On which one?
On the one that talks about Bernie.
All right. Somebody said something about Bernie there. I didn't see.
Mhm.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. This is from Carol Vincent. I had the pleasure of knowing Bernie, the great Bernie, who did such a lot for Tottenham and for everyone. His time in Parliament as an MP was marked by how he always spoke up for those less able and those who fought for justice so powerfully and rigorously. What mattered most of all mattered to Bernie, especially for reparations for those still suffering the effects of slavery. Rest in power, Bernie.
Yes, reply to that. I'm so glad that you told us in your comments so much about, as you say, the great Bernie. He left us far too young. He had decades that he passed, and it was a very sad event. But what I wanted to say is that I haven't been resident in London for 25 years. One of the things I want to see now that I'm back in London is the Bernie Grant Art Centre. And I have arranged with Sharon Grant to go to the centre on Friday next week at 10:30 and have a look at the art centre and pay a little tribute to the memory of Bernie Grant MP. So anybody happens to be passing through Harringay at the time, I will be there doing my little tribute, because I think it's important that we recognize the achievements of those who are exceptional, because it doesn't come easy for Bernie. He got a lot of opposition, and yet I think he did more for African people and people generally than many others.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. I'm not sure, Steve. I've got Joseph on my screen, on my main screen. Just his name is up. I've got Marcia's hand up, and I've got Stephen Howard.
Greetings.
Is it Marcia? Thanks.
Greetings. I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much, Comrade Tony, listening to you. But I just wanted to say that when you Luke, when you put up the details of the story that Tony wrote, could you just put it in the chat, because you put it up so fast I couldn't get the name of it. So if you can put it in the chat, I would appreciate it. Sorry, we can't hear you. Your volume's gone.
Right. While we're waiting for Luke to return, yes, we will circulate the details of Tony's book And if I can take the chair for a moment till Lucas seems to have disappeared completely, actually.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can we have Stephen Howard followed by Martin Felix, and then we'll move on to the next section of the meeting. So Stephen, then Martin, please.
Yes, thanks for the recognition, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate the presentation. I'd just like to make one quick comment. I'd really like to hear what people have to say about compensation, because my three first steps in reparations would be: 1, debt forgiveness for all African and Black nations; 2, free education from pre-K through college and university; and 3, free healthcare for all Black people, regardless of where they reside. I would like to hear what you guys have to say about those 3 points. Thank you.
All right, let's have Martin next, and then I think Luke might be back with us, but then Martin, if you speak, and then Luke can.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Steve? Okay,
I can hear you. Martin, next. Martin,
yes, hi. Good morning, and thanks to all. Really appreciate this very important conference. I just really want to address the whole issue of compensation as well, and in terms of the due compensation for the as you said, the greatest crime of committed to humanity, which is the transatlantic slave trade. Now, we've seen some efforts or what people perceive to be reparations, by particularly in the Grenada case. There was this very rich British family, the Trevilians, who came to Grenada as a family and gave an insulting sum of £100,000, $100,000 to Grenada, the families that were, exploited by the Trevilian family. And this sum of $100,000 really amounts to $1 per Grenadian. And I think it's an insult, but some sections in Grenada see it as some kind of meaningful reparations. I think that there's a danger in accepting these sort of like tokens from some of these very, very rich families, and they just give the money as if that basically is supposed to be to make amends for all of the crimes committed. For example, this particular British family, they were responsible for the enslavement of hundreds of Canadians, during the enslavement period, and the descendants in the thousands, right? Grenada, one of the greatest needs that we have is a functioning hospital. And one of the things that I think will probably be more meaningful would have been for them to establish a hospital in the area where the estates were operational in Grenada. We also know that
thanks. We get the gist of what you're saying there, but I think.
But the British banks, the British monarchy, they were all complicit in the enslavement in Grenada. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And clearly the claim, it would be followed, and those claims, people will be making claims and we will be following up on. And I think the commission and the CARICOM commission has got to come up with a formula how to deal with these issues. On a human level, I think it's important to know that although some might have got huge sums of money, 200 years ago, all you need is a good gambler in the family or a drunkard, and that money can soon disappear. We don't know what the circumstances of those who might be making reparations, how much they can make, and the rest of it. So these are issues that I think will have to be by those who are paying. But our main thrust really is for the government to pay reparations. You know, I think it's good that some of the heirs of slavery are able to make some payment and make some apology and make some reparations. But at the end of the day, it's the government we need that apology from, the British government. We need reparations from them at the levels that we need to develop our societies. And I think in some ways it's almost impossible to tell how much, you know, one family that got monies sometime in the past and how much they can afford or how much they've got and where their money's coming from. Okay, thanks. We take June. Will you? June's got her hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you do.
Okay, good afternoon. Hi, good afternoon.
Okay.
Two things. I hear people say about the money. That's fine. So I'm saying, who is going to get the money and who is asking for the money? So if you say the British government should make an apology, that's very clear. Apologize. That's fair. It's an apology. But who's going to ask for the apology? Is it one country? Is it CARICOM? Is it the Commonwealth? Do you know what I mean? It's too open. And people are going to sit back and wait for you to do the work. So maybe put together some suggestions of how the apology should be done. What form should it take? Written? Do we write letters? Do you understand what I mean? It's easy to say,
Yes,
oh,
yes, okay.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. And the second one is regarding the money given from this family. The gentleman had said it would have been better if they'd made a hospital. But when they were coming over, why didn't the government say, instead of giving us the money, can you put it towards the university and open another, say, technical wing or educational wing? Do you see what I mean? Sometimes it's always about money, money, money. But as the man, as you said, do a hospital, do a school. Was it David Cameron that went to Jamaica and said, oh, we'll build a prison? Really? No. But when you know they're coming over, have the plan ready. Don't wait for them to come and say, here's the money. You already know that. I
Yeah.
think there's too much talking and not enough action. This group could be actioning. They're so activist, you know, they're on it. They can move this conversation forward within a week. Thank you.
I think, okay, thank you very much for that, June. As far as I know, what's happening, CARICOM is trying to CARICOM is a body that represents us from the Caribbean that is actually putting the case to the British government for apology and for reparations. So, and they're putting that case as well to all the European countries that benefited from the enslavement of Africans. And I'm thinking, and I know that they're working on coming up with some kind of formula, some kind of way in which reparations should be paid. I think it's a bit haphazard for, you know, people to just appear and say, okay, I'm throwing this money at this or throwing money at that without consulting. And this is the important part of it. I think it's important that people talk to our representatives who are making the claim for reparations, just out of courtesy, really. You know, you just don't declare whatever. But yes, so I think those have been formulated.
I want to thank both the first and the last questioner, both of whom talked about the remedies and the damages, because I think we have reached a critical stage. For the last 10 years or so, I was appointed one of the members of the original Caribbean Reparations Commission in 2009. And then we were talking about making the case for reparations. The case is made now. And particularly it's been made for our peoples. And the second stage is going to be, what are the damages? What is the claim? What can we, how? The same questions that you were asking. I'm happy to say to the first question that the plan does debt cancellation, it does include measures to improve education, and it does include something about health. Probably not enough. This is where I want to come back to you, because I don't think we can expect committees of sitting in different parts of the Caribbean necessarily to have all the answers. I believe that the formulation of a claim for reparations should be an exciting and a creative and a consultative and a process which we don't just leave to the experts and then complain about. I've spoken to some of the, to one descendant of slavery. She is very anxious to play her part. Luke is right to say that the claim, well, shall we say the claim that my government, I mean the Jamaican government, is involved in formulating, is a claim by the government on behalf of the people as a whole. But the government, and it's against the British government, because the British government is the official body which is responsible for the actions of the British state. And it is, in this case, it's particularly easy because the British state, from the king downwards, has made enormous profits from the slave trade. And
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm not hesitating because
Yes,
no,
sir.
you have to, one of the reasons I'm back here with
Yeah.
Luke, do you want me to move into my section now?
Yes, hold on. Let's just take one more question. I see Martha's got a hand. Then we'll come into another section. Steve will speak more specifically. Very good. I try to give a little broader.
Marcia, I think Luke indicated that you should say what you wanted to say and then we'll move on.
Marcia being Marcia nurse, because there's another Marcia on here.
No, you're Marcia with a hand up. That's you.
Okay, fantastic. Hello, I'm speaking from Barbados, and I'd just like to make some comments on information shared. I know today we're addressing reparations as it relates to enslavement of persons born in Africa and born in the West Indies over 200 plus years, and the resultant impact on peoples of today who continue to live in the West Indies, live in other colonies, areas that were colonies of Britain, and also those who live obviously in Britain. I'd just like to share that I believe that we also have to acknowledge, as descendants of people of African origin, the peoples who still live in the West Indies, who are descended from the Kalinago peoples, and that reparatory justice and reparations has to speak to those peoples as well. Groups still live here. I recently witnessed a presentation by 9 nations of the Amerindian communities of Guyana. And I certainly became very educated on their continued acknowledgement in their daily lives of their cultural, spiritual connections to their ancestors. So I believe that reparatory justice, and I'm contributing that although we're speaking of people of African descent, I think we need to acknowledge the descendants of the Kalinago peoples in the region and elsewhere. with regards to large plantation owners like Drax, I observed and listened to what went down in Barbados over the last year, 2 years with regards to that matter. And I do not believe that any action on that matter done here in the island doesn't have a political agenda behind it. And I think we have to be conscious of that and understand that any application to DRAPS for land, and if DRAPS gave land or any other large planter gave land to any government, that the cost of subdivision, installing utilities would be at the expense of people descended from Africans. And therefore, that's all very futile because taxpayers' money would be what the government would be spending on that exercise. So even if DRAPS gave large tract of land, I do not believe that the taxpayers' monies of this country should pay for any subdivision of that land to make it into housing and the installation of utilities. Any lands given by large ex-planters, families of large estates, they would have to give the lands fully developed, even with the structures, because our taxpayers' money in the government's hands should not be paying for that exercise. So that's the second point with regards to drugs. My experience there in Barbados, and I do a lot of genealogy research, and I tie the genealogy research within a historical context. And I believe that in order for peoples of Barbadian descent or other descent within colonies to really embrace reparations and the movement for reparatory justice, that it has to become personal. And I believe that education has to be at the grassroots level. And what I attempt to do every time I present in my small little arena, and every family that I assist with their genealogy research, I try to allow them to have that experience come to their point where they experience the enslavement of their ancestors on a personal level. And when that happens, they then begin to pay attention to reparations. So education at the grassroots level of what does this mean to you in your family, in your space? And what did it mean to your ancestors in their time and in their space? I think education is important at that level. And yes, we all recognize that what happened in 1833 Act and the implementation in 1834 and 1838 disallowed for the enslaved persons to have any compensation. But this situation of suppression of people of African descent, even here in Barbados, the suppression is for many, many years on, and we are all young nations, a nation that is, what we could say, 400 years old, is really a young nation, and therefore we have to be very sure that the foundations that we're setting now will allow for the building of the nation for years to come. So how we address this matter on a national level is very important to raise people's consciousness. And I agree, you don't have to be of African descent to embrace this, the reparations movement, the role of the monarchy, the Church of England, and the government. Certainly in Barbados, I'm not aware of any persons who would be more of a Eurocentric, if I should use that term, descent, embracing reparatory justice or speaking out on these issues whether their ancestors were plantation owners or whether their ancestors were overseers, managers, or whether their ancestors were part of the militia, the military that were based here. That doesn't happen in Barbados, where what we would call white people become involved in issues. It just doesn't happen. They don't become involved in any issues, although they many of the families that we consider white have tremendous economic advantages. So I wanted to say that, and those who visited Barbados, I'm sure, know that. And the other point I wanted to make is, and I also have a concern looking on as a citizen of Barbados and a citizen of the region. And I asked myself, how would any monies be managed? And who would be managing those monies? And how would those monies really appear on the landscape to raise the socioeconomic, move us into a development phase? Who would be managing those monies? Because I think we've reached the understanding, all of us, that monies can disappear. So addressing these matters would have to be that on the landscape. For instance, if we need in Barbados to have private facilities funded through any reparations money for counseling of persons with mental illness or drug abuse. I think that those type of facilities should be funded with this type of money, but that we have to understand how any monies from reparations would really, how would it be handled? And I think that is an issue that
Thank you very
is always in the minds of people here in Barbados. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those questions.
Thank you.
I'll hand it over to Tony to do a response. Thank you.
Mr. Marcia, that was a very moving contribution. Thank you. We're not. I don't think we're ready yet to put in a bill. I think it needs the talents of many people. For instance, psychiatric help. How is it done? Education. How is it done? Health. What is the priority? Indigenous peoples are in the 10-point plan, but in a very general way. But Indigenous people, yes. And I think that if we are supportive rather than hypercritical, we can take part in the process of working out the fairest and most corruption-proof deal that can be made. I mean, the Caribbean is such an extraordinary region. You talked about the Kalinaga. There's another people that I visited, which is the Garifuna in Belize. The Garifuna people in Belize were indigenous people who had rebelled against colonizer, and colonizer, the British Navy, got authority to put them all in a ship and dump them off the coast of Belize. And when I went and spoke to them, I found a proud people. I found they asked my pardon because some of them spoke Spanish and some of them spoke English. But would they mind, since they all speak Garifuna, that we have a meeting in Garifuna and it'll be translated for you? Now, I know that's rambling a bit. It's merely to say that there's so many different possible outcomes, and I think we will be able to work them out, particularly if we have goodwill from some of the other side. I think we'll get there, but it's not just a question of doing a lawyer's job of saying so many £1 million in wages, so many, and say it's easy. But equally, we shouldn't be jumping down the throats of the people. Yeah. It's going to be a hard phase to work out exactly what should be claimed. But meanwhile, we want to increase the consciousness and increase the dialogue. Ask to see high commissioners push the pressure on that reparations is necessary for the Caribbean, and it will turn it from being a beautiful but flawed set of nations to nations that will release their full potential for the benefit of all. And I think as a British citizen, as well as a Jamaican citizen, I will benefit from attempts to cure my society of racism. Racism is a sickness. There's so much in this, and let us go on talking.
Yeah.
In goodwill and good faith.
Yeah, thank you for that brilliant response, Tony. Okay, we've been keeping our next speaker long time.
Hello? Your voice is gone. Do you want me to start now?
Yes, please. Yeah. Over to you.